So hi everyone, and welcome to the second BEAM community call. So today we're going to talk about very important and interesting things, and we have a lot of news, a lot of updates, and a lot of announcements. And let me start my presentation. All right. So what are we going to talk about today? We will start with a short development update about the things we have been doing lately and are doing right now. And then we will talk about privacy. And then we'll talk about DeFi. And then for the most part of this meeting, we'll talk about marketing and adoption and BEAM price and everything that we want to discuss today. So let's start from the development update. So as you know, 5.1 was released. It's online right now. You can download it if you didn't already. And it has our offline transactions, which use the Lilantos Mimblewimble that we have added in our last fork, the 5.0. And it also has improvements in the atomic swaps. The fees were reduced by using the Segwit transactions. It's actually quite a large improvement, about 50% less fees for atomic swaps. And right now we're working on the mobile wallets, which are already being tested. So I hope that next week, probably Monday, maybe Tuesday, which means tomorrow or the day after, they will be released. And we also created the BEAM Runner game for those of you who maybe had a chance to see it. If not, here's how it looks. And the reason we created it first and foremost for fun, to collect some growth while running the BEAM girl around the maze and jumping and doing all this stuff. And also, of course, we wanted to create an API for future integrations of other games and other applications with the BEAM wallet, which is also running on mobile. And you will see how it works. So let's take a look. I have a short video here. Let's watch about 60 seconds of it. Moving on. 5.2. So the 5.2 is the next version that we are currently working on, and it's already way deep into development. Some features are already in testing. And 5.2 is actually a very important version for us, and we will talk about it a lot today in the privacy section, because it has max privacy transactions, which is, I think, like the most important improvement that the Lilantos Mimblewimble protocol allows us to do. These transactions introduce anonymity set of 64K or 65K, depending on which system you use to count. And they actually require this anonymity set. And this means that those transactions are completely unlinkable. And I will show you how it looks in a minute. Also, this version introduces public offline addresses, which allow you to create a permanent address in your wallet that can be used for donations. You can publish it on your website and then receive donations using our BEAM offline transactions. And it also gives us ability to swap coins with Bitcoin Cash, Bitcoin Satoshi Vision, Dogecoin, and Dash. And this version will be out in a couple of weeks, I believe. We are currently working very hard on it. So let me for 1 second show you how this wallet looks like. I have a masternet version here. So when you click on the receive dialog, you see that we have changed a little bit the structure from the 5.1. And now in the regular section, you have the online for exchanges, the old school SBBS address, and the offline address here, which you can copy and use. And if you switch to max privacy, you have a new type of address, max privacy address, And this is good for only one transaction, unlike regular offline transactions that can be used several times. This is an address for a single max privacy transaction. So you copy and close the token, and then you send it to someone. And then when you paste it into the wallet, it recognizes it as max privacy address. So you can send some Beam using it. And when you click send, what happens is the receiver is shown that the coins are incoming, but the receiver cannot use these coins immediately because they have to accumulate the required anonymity set first. So they're shown as maturing. And then after some time, maybe considerable time, several hours at least, maybe even more, these coins mature, and now these coins are completely unlinked. So there were a lot of questions about max privacy, and we will create a separate video when we release this version to explain exactly how it all works. Can I send it to myself? Does it matter? So I will not talk about it right now because we will address all these issues when the 5.2 is out, but this is how it's going to look like. Okay. What happens after 5.2 is 5.3, and 5.3 is the first version that will introduce UI for confidential assets. As you know, in Beam, you can now create new types of assets. And even though we don't have many assets right now on Beam mainnet, we still have decided to add this UI now, and I will explain in a few minutes why, mainly because of the DeFi platform that we're currently building. And also, one very important thing that this version will have is built-in wallet applications. And this means that you will be able to write and run very interesting applications that are created as a web page inside our wallet. So for example, things like trading or red envelope or any other application that you would, in Ethereum case, have to go to a separate website and open like uniswap.org or any other like SushiSwap or whatever, you could theoretically, if you want, integrate them into your wallet. And also the infrastructure, how it's going to work, can be either centralized. So this application can be either served from a centralized server, or we can also provide the option to distribute this code via SBBS, and then you will have decentralized web applications inside the wallet, which I think is very cool and will also be useful for a lot of applications we're going to build. And all the other features that are above the 5.3, the most important of them, and I really hope that we will be able to introduce this in 5.3, but I didn't want to actually commit to that. So the Beam and Ethereum atomic swaps, I think it's going to be very important. And also in the future, it will allow us to build atomic swaps with specific tokens on Ethereum, such as, for example, DAI and USDT or other like Uni, whatever token we want. You can swap them for Beams in a decentralized and trustless way. So Beam Ethereum atomic swaps are already working on our local testing environment, and tomorrow we will publish a video how it looks today. Hasn't been integrated into UI wallet yet, so it's kind of command line, but it's very impressive nonetheless. Wallet synchronization, the little bit favorite feature, is also going to be implemented in 5.4. Trezor T support, long time coming. I think we will finally release it after we complete the 5.3. And the address book redesign, which is especially important when we start to use more offline addresses, max privacy addresses, and things like that. So that will be completed as well. So now let's talk a little bit about privacy. So here's the thing. Right now, we have managed to achieve all the important features that we wanted from Beam as a privacy coin, as a confidential cryptocurrency for everyday use. We have confidentiality by default. We have broken the linkability problem that was kind of the main theme for attacking Mimblewimble protocol in the past. And we have received a lot of slack from various articles who claim that it's very simple to break Mimblewimble and, figure out who is linked to whom. And even though it's not true, the issue actually exists, and we wanted to address it. So we did that. We have a great usability. Even though Mimblewimble is an interactive protocol, it was very difficult to integrate into existing wallets. We have managed to make this work using our SBBS system and actually provide usable and beautiful wallets to create those transactions. And of course, scalability in terms of the blockchain size. Mimblewimble provides this solution. So all of these 4 features are currently in Beam. Starting from 5.2, they're also available in the UI. So right now, if we take a look at the leading cryptocurrencies, such as Monero and Zcash, and we compare them to Beam, in terms of privacy, yes, there are differences in the technology, and there are differences in the usage, and there are differences in many specifics. However, there is one very important commonality between these 3 leading technologies in privacy coins. And it's the fact that only active and targeted attacks have any theoretical chance of achieving any de-anonymization. This means that one cannot simply take a snapshot of the blockchain and analyze it at his own will, like you can do with Bitcoin, going backwards to the beginning of times. The only way you can attack either of those 3 technologies is by figuring out who your suspect is, target it, send them some funds, and then try to trace these funds as they propagate, and have, if you're lucky, someone with KYC on the other side to receive them. And it's by monitoring large parts of the networks, by running a lot of nodes for each of those networks, by timing the attack. So it's a lot of work for active attacker to try to deduce that. And even though we can, kind of spend hours arguing if Monero is better than Zcash or Beam is better than Monero or whatever, it's kind of meaningless in a day-to-day scenarios, because the truth is that in some cases, actually, each one of these cryptocurrencies can be better. And I will not go into details in which cases, because we can really spend all day talking just about this topic. But it's important to understand that for the practical purpose, for everyday use, these are almost the same in terms of what kind of attacks are possible against this. And even though previously Mimblewimble had this linkability issue that was kind of Achilles heel that could be, attacked every time, like, oh, Mimblewimble has linkability issue. Right now with 5.2, we have solved that even in our desktop wallets, and soon it will be in the mobile, by basically saying that if you want to use max privacy transactions, you don't have this issue. And also our offline transactions are also unlinked. But the difference between offline and max privacy is that max privacy guarantees an anonymity set of 64K, while the offline doesn't. That's the only difference. And with that, we kind of reached this level of privacy that we wanted to reach from the very beginning of the development of our coin for last 30 months or over 2 years. And for the casual use, for everyday use, all of these 3, from our perspective, provide great privacy. And one of the community questions that we will address in a few minutes was, what about government trying to break Monero? Like what will happen if they try to break Beam or whatever? So we will talk about it in a minute. And if you're using operational security for professional use, which means that you are careful what you send and how you send and how much time you wait between sends, and you really know what you're doing. So basically, all of these 3 technologies are very, very difficult to break. So before we move to DeFi, I would like to talk about the recent interview that was recorded by one of the companies that do blockchain analysis, that claim that they have ability to trace Monero transactions and all these contracts that currently go out to other companies to do that. So definitely there are bodies that will try to break either of really popular confidential crypto. However, as of right now, there was no evidence of any, let's say, structural or low-level problem in any of those technologies. So yes, it is possible to trace a specific individual who is not careful and who does a lot of transactions using those targeted attacks as I described, but it does not have any evidence of a problem within the implementation of each of those cryptocurrencies, not Beam, of course, not Zcash, and not Monero. So as you know, Monero has a lot of researchers working on that and trying to break that. So they have a vast body. Zcash have also very strong scientists working there. And Beam has Mimblewimble, which is also as of right now, there was no evidence of like anybody being able to break it. So this is as much as privacy goes. I think if you use any of those three, preferably Beam, you will be as secure as you can be in today's cryptocurrency world. DeFi. So a lot of people asked us when we have announced our intent to create a confidential DeFi platform, or about why did we choose to go this way? Is it because of the hype that currently surrounds DeFi, or what motivated us? And the answer is that from the technology point of view, some things were mentioned from the very beginning of Beam, like for example, scripted scripts. And the idea was that instead of doing smart contracts on a chain, you can calculate some things off chain and then just kind of make the nodes to agree about the results of this calculation, which is the point of scripted scripts. And this is how our atomic swaps work. And this is how our laser beam channels work. And then as we moved forward and created more things on top of Mimblewimble, we saw that it can actually do more things. For example, confidential assets was one of these discoveries, that just by changing kind of one number, you can generate a new type of asset then you can use, and this asset will automatically inherit all the confidentiality properties of Beam. So we have created this option. And then we developed Lilantos Mimblewimble, and even though it's not specifically related to DeFi, it's more of a privacy feature, we have learned that actually we can use the transaction kernels to do more than just transfer value. We can use them to modify the internal state of the node. So in case of the Lilantos Mimblewimble, it modifies the pool, the shielded pool that holds the coins. But in case, for example, of smart contracts, it can modify the state or like some variables inside the node. And now you can create some script or some code that works with those variables. And this is how we came with the idea of Beam shaders. And the concept of a shader, it comes from the computer graphics, from computer gaming area of development, where you can create this customized code that does something to an image or a 3D animation. So we thought it was cool because of this Beam and shaders, and combined it together. And basically it works in exactly the same way as smart contracts on Ethereum. You have some program that you write, and each one of the nodes in the system can run this program and verify the state of the variables that it works with. And in a way, it creates something very interesting. It takes Beam, which is UTXO-based cryptocurrency, just like Bitcoin, and allows using this technology to transform it into kind of an account-based cryptocurrency like Ethereum. So we can do both. We can create transactions with UTXOs, and we can also modify the state of the node inside and create accounts. And when we have figured out how to do this, we thought how we shall call it, like what we should do. And of course, at that time, DeFi was very popular. So we said, okay, let's call it confidential DeFi. So yes, in terms of the name, we went after the hype, but in terms of technology, it was something that kind of, I don't know, organically developed and evolved from our development process. So let's see, what are we actually talking about? First of all, in terms of the applications, right, which is what we all are interested in, like what can you do with this? I think there are several very important and interesting things that we can and are going to do with this technology. The first one is the confidential stablecoin, which basically will work very similar to DAI, the MakerDAO coin, which means it will be algorithmic. It will not be backed by a real currency somewhere in the real bank, but rather it will be based on oracles, and it will be based on lending process where you put some collateral and in return you get some amount of a stable coin. The difference will be is that the transactions that create and work with these coins will be confidential, because obviously they will run on Beam chain, right? So I think it will be very useful and very interesting application. The other one is automated market making based swap exchanges like Uniswap. And this is also something quite interesting. And today we see a lot of projects that are doing similar things. The differences are which kind of market maker you select, which kind of algorithm, which kind of formula you select. But also in this case, the contract itself will be transparent, of course, because you need to know what the final amount is to figure the price relation. Because in this swap exchange, you don't have Oracle. You are basically calculating the price from the arbitrage that you create, right? So if there are like two pools of coin, and if somebody takes out from one side of the pool, then you have this imbalance, which can be closed in an arbitrage deal, and then it rebalances itself. It's like kind of powered by human greed, okay, which is very cool. And it's completely trustless. You don't need oracles for that. You don't need to trust anyone with that information. So this is obviously something that we would like to do. And also the order book based DEX. So you can trade, let's say you have created several types of assets. How do you actually buy them? Do you really need to go to a centralized exchange every time? And the answer is no. It's actually very simple to do that in our wallet, because unlike different chains that you have, like the atomic swap process that you need to go through and it takes time, when we're talking about assets that have been created on Beam, you can exchange any number of assets within a single transaction. You can like take 10 types, send 10 types and receive 10 other types back with different amounts within a single Beam transaction, which is very cool. And this is going back a few screens ago. One of the reasons that we are developing this UI for confidential assets is because this UI is also going to serve as a basis for our decentralized exchange built directly into the wallet, which I think will be amazing. As for technology, we have mentioned Beam shaders, which are similar in concept to smart contracts on Ethereum. We have decided to use WebAssembly as a technology for these contracts. And for those that are not familiar with this, WebAssembly is actually this kind of intermediary layer that allows people to create these contracts using a lot of different programming languages, starting from C++ and JavaScript and Python and many others. And then all of them are compiled into this WebAssembly language, which has very strict specification. And then it runs inside our nodes. And as I mentioned, it will be integrated directly into UI. So WebAssembly is actually, the choice of WebAssembly, one of the reasons was because it already has an existing ecosystem of tools and services that, examples, programming tutorials, everything people need to start developing. And of course, for all specific things that are related to developing on top of Beam, we will provide documentation and examples to do just that. So how do we provide liquidity for all of these things? After all, it's not like people will rush developing on top of Beam once we release this. So for that, we're working on decentralized Ethereum bridges. And further, we will use the same concept for the Polkadot bridges. It's very similar in concept. And here it's actually very interesting because as of right now, this is a unique development. There is no such thing in the world yet, at least not for like Ethereum. The idea is that there is a contract on Ethereum that can understand what is going on the Beam chain. And there is a contract on Beam that knows what's going on in the specific contract on Ethereum. And those are synchronized using outside kind of brokers that are trustless. They just distribute information. And using the technology that's called Fly Client that we have in our wallets today already implemented, we can do rather efficient validation of the blockchain state without actually downloading the entire blockchain. And this is very cool feature. So once we have that, you will be actually able to move assets from Ethereum to Beam. So let's say you have 100 DAI and you just send them to a specific contract, and on the opposite side on Beam, you receive 100 BDAI or wrapped assets back to your wallet, Beam wallet, and now you can trade them confidentially. And if you want, you can move them back in the same manner. And this means that anyone who has any assets on Ethereum will be able to move them and work with them on Beam and use them as part of all of those applications like DEX and AMM-based exchanges and things like that. So it's going to be huge, but it still will take some time to develop. And one of the things we're going to announce today is that in November, and we will try to make it November the 5th because of, V for Vendetta Day and all that, but maybe it will take a little more time, but we will roll out BeamX, which is going to be a confidential DeFi experimental network. It's kind of a public testnet for these contracts. And this means that people will be able to start developing contracts on top of Beam, basically starting next month. and I think it will be very important. We are going to use all these feedback and all these interactions with developers who would like to try implementing on Beam, and we will also have a hackathon on this subject, and we will also, of course, propose bounties for implementing these contracts, and we will use this feedback to improve the platform together with the developers. And I think it will be very efficient and effective process, much better than just developing something and then only then showing it to the world. So this is definitely something that we are very excited about and something to expect. And it's actually very, very close to us. Questions, anyone? Okay. Everybody's being very quiet.
I have a question.
Yeah.
How long do you think it'll take for that algorithmic stablecoin to be released on Beam?
So basically, it depends. First of all, we will have to fork to 6.0, which is the version the fork that will include all these contracts. And then we are going to deploy this coin. And I think by then it will already be developed. So we're talking about, I hope, 3 to 4 months.
Okay, thank you.
Maybe 5, but don't catch me on the word. But we're working on that. And actually, just before this call, I have received the commit of the demo contract, and I will tweet about it right after the call. The demo that shows the idea of a CDP being implemented on the Beam inside our contract. I think it's going to be very interesting to see. I have just asked Vladi to add some comments, so it will also be understandable for those who are not, too deep into C++ implementations. So yeah, I think it will be very interesting. By the way, when we launch the experimental network in November, we will already start seeing how it works. So we will be able to play with these concepts even before they appear on Beam mainnet. So definitely going to be very interesting. All right. Well, how did I get here? So let's go over some questions that we have received from our community. Let me move this back. Let me stop sharing my screen for a second and have a good look at you all. Okay. Let me find this. So everything related to Beam price and the position of Beam and whether we're satisfied with it, we will address in a minute in the marketing section, and then we will discuss it in depth. Getting into merger with Atom, I don't think we will right now. There is a Ghost Stack question here that's how will the blockchain size increase with Ghost Stack? So I'm sorry, I cannot answer that yet. It's still being researched. Will Beam move to proof of stake, or can Beam move to proof of stake? Yes, we can, but we probably won't. We like the proof of work as of now. And there is a question that I think I know who asked it about atomic swaps using offline transactions. So the problem with atomic swaps is not the kind of transaction that you're using. It's rather the fact that you need to monitor the networks that you use for atomic swaps. Let's say you're doing Bitcoin with Beam. So you need to monitor the blockchain, the Bitcoin blockchain, to see what is happening there. And for that, you kind of need to be online. So because the atomic swap process actually includes 3 transactions, like you have the lock transaction, then you have the redeem transaction from both sides, and you need to synchronize them in terms of time so no one can cheat and kind of break in the middle. So for this reason, you do need to be online and to actively monitor, unless you have some kind of centralized solution like light watchtowers, light towers, what is called? Lighthouses, or something that does it for you. But we don't have that.
Watchtower.
Watchtowers, yes. Sorry, I have gone through all the possible permutations. Okay. So there was a question, what is the incentive for adding liquidity to the pool? Yield farming. Yeah, so basically once we have these Beam shaders you can implement all of the same technologies that you currently have on Ethereum, which means yield farming or whatever. So the only question is of scale, because you need liquidity to do that. Okay. Let's see what other questions we have here. Okay, an important question about integration with third-party wallets. So what happens there is we have created an architecture that kind of takes part of the wallet and moves it into, let's say, web wallet that we have demonstrated and released for testnet. However, there is still another part of the wallet which handles all the communications and the SBBS and such. And this part remains running on a centralized trustless service. And we thought that this architecture would be good enough for, let's say, third-party wallet providers to be able to integrate us, because all they need to do is basically take a small part of our key management system, integrate it into the wallet, and then use these servers that we provide just to handle the SBBS and communications. But turned out that's not what happened. So they didn't really want to even to do that, to run these servers. And basically what happened is that we went back to the drawing board and we said, okay, let's restructure this architecture and let's move more of it off, off comms, off communications. Let's make like more of it offline. And this is the reason why we didn't release the web wallet to the mainnet, even though we had it on our testnet. So since we're now dealing with 5.2 and the confidential DeFi stuff, it kind of got a little bit delayed, but we will get there and we'll rework this architecture. And when we're done, I think it will be much easier to do two things. First of all, run Beam inside your browser as a web wallet, including maybe large parts of the node, because that was like one of the problems, that you needed communication between the wallet and something that can understand what's going on the blockchain. And also it will simplify the efforts to integrate us into third-party wallets. So that's what we're doing here. Okay. How do you test privacy, and how does the tests vary as layers and features are added? The usage stats of Mimblewimble, Lelantus Mimblewimble, and the original Mimblewimble. Okay, so that's a very important question. So first of all, let's do it in 3 steps. Properly testing privacy requires a lot of scientific research, which we don't have the capacity to do. So I don't know, there is like more research was done on Monero and Zcash, but they're older and they had more time on the market and they have higher market cap. But I hope we'll get there as well. So that's for like really testing the privacy, like how difficult it is to break statistically and, establish the link between transactions, stuff like that. However, as for the implementation that we have, the specific implementation of an algorithm that was described in the paper, we had an independent review of this implementation, an audit. After we have added Lelantus Mimblewimble, we have hired a company that we have worked with before, auditing us at the beginning, and we have done implementation review. So at least we can be sure that our implementation is adequate to the paper that we have implemented and does not contain bugs in basic cryptography. As for Lelantus Mimblewimble pool status and the percentage, so up to 20% of each block is dedicated to Lelantus Mimblewimble transactions, which means you cannot do more than 20% of Lelantus Mimblewimble transactions in each block. And the state of the pool will be displayed in the blockchain explorer. So for each block, you will see how many these kinds of transactions were there and how many UTXOs are currently in the pool. So this information will be displayed in the blockchain explorer starting from 5.2. Yes, any questions about that before we move on? Okay. So let me reshare my screen and let's continue to the important thing. Okay, so let's talk about marketing or adoption or awareness or anything you will want to call it. So does anyone knows what this is? What is this?
Looks like an engine of an Audi.
Yes, this is an engine made by Audi. It's actually a 5.2 liter V10. And it produces like 700 horsepower or something in most cars. So what do you feel like? What kind of words come to your mind when you look at this picture? Which words like you're thinking?
Audi.
Audi. Oh, horsepower. Okay. Anyone thinking like technology or something like that, like along those lines?
Maybe a V12.
Yeah.
Nah, actually,
Other engines. This is a V10 specifically, but basically you're thinking about the technology, right? It's like something technical. Speed. Great. All right. Now let's look at the next picture and tell me which words come to your mind when you see this next picture.
Lambo.
Lambo. What else?
Speed.
More.
Comfort.
Comfort.
Luxury.
Luxury. Like emotions, right? So, wow, this is an amazing car. I would like this car, right? I would really love to have it. Like, I would love also to have a V10 in my house, but I would prefer this one, right? So the thing is that inside this car, there is that same engine that you saw in the previous picture. It's powering this car, right? But what you'd really want is the Lambo. You don't want the engine, right? Even though it's inside it, basically. And even though the technology is important, this kind of picture is much more important than just the technology. It has something else. It has some emotional, like wow effect, right? It's like if you see this car on the street, and it's, by the way, extremely unlikely because there are only 20 of these cars that were produced for the entire world. This is specifically, it's called Lamborghini Centenario, and it's a very limited edition from 3 years ago. But if you see this car, you're like, whoa, what was that? And you see this noise, like you hear this noise, like, right? So it's an amazing machine. And even though the technology is important, like it was not important enough for any of you to say, wait a minute, Alex, but Centenario doesn't have a V10, it has a V12. So yeah, you take my point, right? There is a technology and there is something you can do with it. And what I'm trying to say here is that what we want to show to the world is this, right? And it should look amazing. And even if we look at it without any icons or the Beam name, you immediately know that we're talking about the Beam wallet here because it's recognizable, right? It's kind of a brand. It has this color palette and it has these lines that you can recognize. Instead, what we have been doing a lot during the last time is talking about technology and saying this Mimble, Wimble, Lelantos, Dandelion, aggregate signatures, relative kernels, and all these things that are very important, but they do not like create this kind of feeling that, yeah, I really want to use that, or I want that. So one of the changes that we're making in our marketing strategy is trying to kind of leave the technology a little bit, behind, not in terms of not using it or not developing it, but try to talk more about the products that we're creating. And it becomes more important now because, as you know, we're switching to confidential DeFi, and this means more trading applications, and it means exchange. And like when you go to an exchange like Binance or whatever, and you use it, and it's very easy to use, it has a lot of features. You don't think, wait a minute, this probably runs on an Apache web server. You don't care, right? It just works for you. And this is one of the things that we're trying to do, because we're all technical people here, like on the development side, and we really understand this stuff. But for a lot of people, this is kind of, mimble wimble of it all, like whatever. What we want is something that's easy to use, that's simple, and that gets things done. So now that we have reached this level, that we have great privacy, and we're developing new level of applications on top of our platform, this is one of the changes that we're going to make going forward. One of the things that will come out of this process is a new name, not for Beam. We're not doing rebranding of any kind. We like this name. However, what we do want is to choose a new name for our new product line, right? The confidential DeFi product line. whether it's the wallets that go with it, and whether it's the fork that we're going to do. We want a new name, and we want you to help us to choose it. And we will start this process in our community later in the week. What we need is basically something that sounds cool, that is not overused and easy to Google, something that we're going to associate with our new product line, something unique, something interesting, and which sounds nice and easy to pronounce. Not a simple task. And we have some ideas, but we want our community to really participate in this project, because this is going to be our new kind of name for the platform. And it will be like something powered by Beam. And it will lead us, I hope, into a better marketing future with like less, because today, like, what is Beam? It's like Mimblewimble plus Lilantos, Mimblewimble plus this, plus that. I don't want to say that. I want to say like, this is what it is. Go Google it if you want. This is what we're currently producing. Okay, so that's the first problem that we have recognized with our kind of discussion and marketing that we used up until now. The second problem is green. And unfortunately, the problem is not that we have this strong competitor that is kind of, competing with us, and we have difficulties because of that. The problem is that, unfortunately, green has been doing less things that we did during the last couple of years since our launch. And we actually, from one perspective, like, we did a lot of new features that they don't have, and we have atomic swaps, and we have laser beam, and now we have DeFi, and we have already confidential assets, and we have done Lilanto. So we've done much more. However, if you look at the charts, and these are the charts of Beam and green versus BTC, daily candles, I think. Who can tell me which one is which? What is on top, Beam or green? Anyone wants to guess? Beam on top, green on top?
I'm pretty sure Beam is on top.
Beam is on top, okay. So who cares? They look exactly the same at all resolutions, right? So from the market perspective, even though we have done like 10 times more stuff and like really invested ourselves in, producing, but from the market perspective, those two coins are exactly the same. And one of the things that we need to achieve is to untangle ourselves from this trend, because it's kind of not relevant anymore. So yes, 2 years ago, like in January 2019, whenever that was, nobody knew what Corona is, and nobody knew what's going to happen. There was this kind of a competition, and there was a process of like 2 Mimblewimble coins launching at almost the same time. And it was interesting. But now this story is not interesting, and nobody talks about it anymore. Like, you don't hear this conversation anymore. However, all the moves on the market are exactly the same. By the way, I want to tell you that, do you know what the most stable thing in crypto is? You think it's a like kind of stable coin? No. The most stable thing in crypto is the price difference between Beam and green. It was like plus or minus 5 cents for like the last, I don't know, 7 months. It's unbelievable. So I have no idea how to do that. And if somebody actually has an idea, I would really love to hear it. How to untangle ourselves from the market level from this coupling. Okay. Any questions so far?
Like, what do you mean by that?
I mean that whenever somebody sells some green, for some reason, somebody else or the same person also sells some Beam, and vice versa. So I do not want this correlation anymore. I don't know.
I mean, I think it's happening because of, it is still a Mimblewimble coin. You look at.
Yes, and that's exactly the point that I was making earlier, because there was like Mimblewimble, and then we did like 5 things on top of Mimblewimble, but somehow for this trading, we're still Mimblewimble coin, even though we have like 3 times more technology right now. We're basically not just a Mimblewimble coin anymore.
Right. So make people aware of that. We're not just a Mimblewimble that does privacy. We're more than that.
Exactly.
Because I think
So,
the problem is the communication. It needs to be kind of like made aware. Because even the Bitcoin maximalists, they shut down Mimblewimble and made it look like, you know, crap, like it's a scam or something. So we just need to get out of the, you know, we're just Mimblewimble and just make people aware that we're more than that.
I exactly agree. I exactly agree. So let's talk about that. Let me just, there are 3 more slides and then we will just talk. So what do we have working for us? We have strong fundamentals. We're decentralized, permissionless. By the way, the things that we're doing with bridges, that they are decentralized, it's a major effort, and we could have done it much simpler using centralized solutions, but we didn't, because we do want this decentralization. We're proof of work. We have capped emission, which I think are all kind of strong features. We have strong values of privacy, decentralization, usability that we do not and are not willing to, you know, give up or bend in any case. And it's very important to us. And we have a strong team, both from the point of view of the R&D speed and dedication and innovation, by the way. Like, I don't know how many people in the world are aware, but not only were we the first to launch the Mimblewimble, that's okay, but we were also the first to implement Lilantus, and we're the first to implement FlyClient, and a lot of different technologies that are in Beam right now, we were the first to implement. So we're like very innovative as well. And we changed a lot of things. We have adapted a lot of things. We didn't just, you know, borrow, definitely not borrow code, or all the code is ours, but also not borrow the ideas. So for Lilantus Mimblewimble, by the way, it's the same concept, but it's completely reworked to work in our environment. And it's not like, there were a lot of changes there. And we even published a paper about those. So what do we need? Adoption, awareness, and applications. And we'll talk about all that in a minute. And what are we doing about it right now? So one thing you have just mentioned, tell the world that you're not just a Mimblewimble coin anymore. So that's what we're trying to do. On social media, maybe you have noticed we have become more active. I have started using Twitter. Yeah, so I'm doing that right now. Interviews and AMAs, we're trying to do more, and you will see, I think, more of those in the coming months. Initiative, just a few days ago, we have launched Beam Africa Challenge, and it's very important to us, and this is going to be like one of many such events or such processes. Basically, the idea was to encourage people to dream and think of ideas that you can build with Beam or on top of Beam or around Beam. And we have a lot of technology for that. We have APIs, we have soon contracts, but even today we have different types of wallets. We have a lot of stuff we can do. Hackathons that we're going to use more as well. Regarding partnerships, I have mentioned the wallets that we're going to rework our infrastructure for that, but we are trying to get more partnerships, not successfully so far, but we're constantly talking to different organizations, different people, and different projects. And we're publishing that in our news channel, so you can get updated. Yeah, that was it.
So may I ask a question?
Of course.
So I see a lot of movement in like European and like African regions, but I don't see a whole lot of movement in like US. And I'm not sure, like from what I've been following, I see that US is probably going to lead the next bull market, at least in my opinion. Is there a reason why Beam is not being as like, I guess, I don't want to use the word shield, but like, you know, familiarized to the U.S. You know, residents as much as it is to like European and, you know, the other side.
Yes, I agree. I agree that our reach is kind of not distributed equally amongst different countries and continents. So what we would like to ask you to help us with is to get these like kind of ideas. So we can do the process of like reaching out, of course. For example, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, I gave an interview. It was something crypto cash. I don't remember exactly the name of that podcast, but that guy actually was from the States. And yes, so he didn't follow Beam development, and now he does, because he said, wait a minute, I thought you were just like this kind of another Mimblewimble coin. And I said, yeah, but we have this and this and this, and actually it helped. We're trying to reach. Many of those are not free. Many of those just say, okay, you have to pay us, what was it? 1 Bitcoin for like a TikTok move, or like 3 minutes of, I don't know, something. It's like the big influencers, they cost money, but not all of them are like this. I think a lot of our serious tech channels, and definitely just throw us suggestions. And also conferences. There are a lot of conferences going on right now. We miss some of them, and this is unfortunate. I think conferences are a great place to showcase ourselves. We have participated in a few. And by the way, now that it's all online, it's much cheaper and much more efficient. And it's also automatically recorded and can then be distributed.
One thing I just want to add about in this regard, the reason we are stronger, I would say, in Africa, India, and China is because the people there, the leading people, who some of them are on this call, really took Beam and embraced it and took it and wanted to spread the awareness around it in their region, in their communities. So far, we didn't have anyone like this in the States. So basically, this effort comes from the ground up in these specific cases.
That's fair.
Okay. So let's talk about marketing more. Like, what do you think about the things I have said? What do you think about the things like you obviously were thinking before I said them? Like, what is your, share your thoughts a little. Any original ideas?
Yeah, I think the best way to separate ourselves from Grin is to have an ecosystem with a use case that they don't. Because right now they're looking at us like just two currencies, but you know, they're using currencies by spending Bitcoin.
Yes, you're absolutely right. So this is something that we really hope to achieve with the addition of applications like confidential stablecoin is like one example, but I'm talking more about trading, different types of trading. So basically, most of this ecosystem that is related to trading is now based on Ethereum. And there are a lot of good reasons for that, of course, but there are also a lot of problems. And I'm not just mentioning the fees, that's like different story, but also the transparency of it all, the front running that's happening, all these things. So yes, we definitely want to be able to say in a few months that now you can not just transfer value confidentially with Beam, but you can also trade confidentially. I hope that will be a differentiator, definitely. But once again, before that, I don't know, maybe there are not like a lot of opportunities for like specific integrations for like, real use cases. But if you think about any of those, please bring them to us and we will definitely investigate. But yeah, I agree. So I think that, yeah.
Oh no, I was just gonna say maybe suggest some sort of incentives like to start building on Beam once the like DApps and everything else on Beam blockchain.
Absolutely.
Kind of get people ready in advance before you release the final product, so that way you get interest in advance rather than hey, we got this product, now we're ready for you to start developing for us, or like kind of like getting into it or whatever.
Yes, I absolutely agree. So what happened previously is that Beam core technology is C++, hardcore, very difficult to get into. And this is why even when we offered bounties for specific developments, there were not a lot of takers. There were some, but even for bounties for like relatively simple tasks in our UI wallets and such, there were like very few developers who wanted to deal with that because of the learning curve. However, now that we have a lot more technologies around Beam. And soon we will also have smart contracts, which once again, you can implement in many different languages. We will definitely offer more opportunities to participate in our ecosystem. And this is the reason why I am pushing to release this experimental network so early in the process. It's going to be buggy as hell. Like, it's going to be very, very draft, first version. But the reason we want it out as soon as possible is just because of this ability to show it to the world and gather, developers and do hackathons and, do bounties on specific contracts. Yeah, so yeah, we are doing that for sure.
I had a question.
Yeah.
So there was an update that someone has to lock up 3,000 beams to create a confidential asset. So I was wondering, what is the logic behind this number, 3,000? Why not less or more?
Okay, so the number itself was kind of voted by the community. We have provided some range between like 1,000 and 5,000, something like that. And the reason why it's not free is because we didn't want to allow spamming the mainnet with like assets, because each type of asset, because the asset type itself is also confidential. So there is a proof that your asset is one of the specific amount of types. And if you're able to freely generate endless amount of asset types, these proofs will just get heavier without any reason. So we wanted to, when you're deploying your asset on our mainnet, we wanted you to lock these coins. So these coins, they don't disappear. If you just create an asset and you can destroy it later and get your deposit back. But for that, you need to collect all your coins back also. So you cannot just create a coin and then distribute it and then say bye-bye, I'm deleting it. So that was the logic. It was like some number, and the community voted for 3,000 beams.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Sure. Any other ideas?
I think Pri has a question, but it's very difficult to hear.
Okay. I'm hearing some noise coming from somewhere, but I'm not sure where it comes from. Maybe use the chat for that. Ask Binance to update the research report. It's because it's outdated. We talked to them, no? Yeah?
I just now, literally now, pinged them.
Okay.
We probably need to feed them with I think Beam is updating faster than they used to.
There is a question about Lilantus versus Zcash sapling. I think these are two completely different things, but let's do it. I will address that separately, and I will forward the answer either through the community channel or directly to you. Tom Elvis Jetersor is suggesting to contact academics to talk about Beam and its tech. Yeah, it's a good idea. But yeah, let's try that. Leverage trading. It's not, we're just providing the platform. You can build your leverage trading or whatever on top of it. We would love it. Incentives for adding liquidity to the pool. Do you mean like a Lilantus pool, like the shielded pool, or do you mean something else?
I think he means probably liquidity pool.
Liquidity pools?
Yeah.
Beam DEX. So basically, it's the ability to trade confidentially, first and foremost. And if you have applications and you don't want to allow front running or like figuring out what exactly is going on and who is sending, who is the whale, who is currently, suddenly bought something and things like that, then our platform will have advantages. And also it should be very easy to use, because we're going to integrate it both into our wallets for decentralization, And we'll probably also have some kind of web services that are going to be a little bit more centralized in a way, but still provide accessibility. So about the token, by the way, so we have ability to create confidential assets. So one of the things that we're thinking is maybe creating some kind of additional assets for different purposes, but we couldn't come up with any idea what to do with them other than speculation, and we didn't want to do that. Like a lot of projects have this kind of what's this called, governance token, and in some of them it's completely meaningless. Not in all. Some are doing great job, like MakerDAO, for example, but some are doing I don't know what, and for some reason it goes up in price, but we don't want to go there.
I've had a thought on the launch of when you guys gonna make the 64K anonymity available in GUI. Like maybe some sort of a bounty. If you guys are sure like of your product that it is 64K anonymity and it's practically uncrackable, maybe some sort of a bounty to crack it, just to kind of like assure people like it's uncrackable, and if you think you can crack it, then here's whatever for the bounty.
Okay,
as a reassurance.
we'll think about that.
Just a suggestion. I don't know.
Yeah. I get it. Yeah, I'm not. It's not like I'm not sure about the deck, but is that the common practice? People doing that? Yeah, we can do it.
I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, so definitely that's a possibility. So the problem is that, as I said, most of the cracking, so-called, it actually happens in like specific scenarios. Guy, want to say something? Add something? No? Okay. You switched on your camera all of a sudden. Okay. Dropping Beam name would untangle the project. I agree. Might be. We thought about it. We thought about doing rebranding. I think somebody like Zcoin, I think, is doing something like that, rebranding, complete rebranding. But it's a very, very time-consuming process. We love the name, and we don't really, why should we change? Let them change to something.
I'm against rebranding. I think Beam is great. What you guys have right now is great. It will come in time. The progress is there. People will see. It's going to come in time.
Yeah, I agree. But we definitely need to do to make some like more noise, and we're trying to get ourselves into all kinds of different discussions. I really hope that now with the platform it will be easier for us, because we will be also able to participate not only in these like privacy coin discussions, but also in the DeFi discussion. So what happened in the last couple of like maybe 6 months is that even the Mimblewimble word, which was kind of the only, I don't know, like thing that kind of like Beam is Mimblewimble, that got quickly appropriated by Litecoin, and with their outreach, even though they like came late to the party and they're just adding this as extension block and stuff like that, even then, like with their number of users and followers, like if you Google Mimblewimble, 99% of the things you will find is about Litecoin. So even that word stopped working for us, like the only thing we had. So yeah, we have to invent something new. We have to invent a new word at least, like after all the technology that we have created, like give us that. But so yeah, that's a problem. Very difficult to find Beam out there. And also Beam itself is not like very easily Googleable. Like you have construction beams and stuff like that. Difficult to find us. So you basically have to know where to look, or you have to be in specific forums. And I do not. So if you notice, like some of the communities kind of stopped growing, some are still growing at some pace, but it wasn't like the rate of growth that we had in the beginning. So there's definitely. So we are aware of that. We're working on that. So it's not like we're blind or pretend it doesn't happen.
So instead of DeFi, you can call it BeamFi.
Anything goes, man. Yeah, just drop all your suggestions. We will vote on all of that. Whatever, man. Any fi. What? Just get me out of this thing. I can't see it anymore. It's crazy. Yeah. So wow, the time flies. I'm okay. If any of you have to go, I'm okay staying here.
I want to say a few things. So I think the fun start should really begin in few months when BIM will have full smart contract capabilities on top of all the other stuff that we did, the privacy enhancement, etc. And you've seen the ability of BIM devs to develop innovative stuff pretty fast. So once we will complete the smart contract platform and we'll do a stable coin, then other people will be able to mimic that and do additional stuff. And with the same mechanism, you can do an instrument that follow up stocks, commodities, etc. So and couple all of that with the great usability, user experience, and privacy. And I think that the real interesting stuff just ahead of us. And as Romanov said, we'll have trustless, again, innovative trustless bridges into Ethereum ecosystem. So the ability to switch assets with counterparties in Ethereum and do stuff like have a presentation of BMCAs on top of Ethereum, Uniswap, etc. So quite interesting stuff. Great times ahead.
Yes, indeed. So I think let me get to the best slide of all, the thank you slide. Thank you. Thank you very much for being with us here. It's been great as usual. So see you next time, and next time we will have like a lot more stuff. Keep following us on all our channels. YouTube, I'm working hard recording those videos, loving it. So it's been great, and see you next time.